Boris Johnson has given an interview to the CEO of Mumsnet, and it was pretty brutal. Here is how it started.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us. We know how busy you are.
Absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate the time. I'm going to kick off first with a question about trust and integrity, because of the many, many hundreds of questions we got on Mumsnet, about half were on this subject.
Yes.
So, as you know, I'm going to ask user questions to you.
Yes.
So here we go. This is a pretty typical question that sums up the mood on Mumsnet, I'd say, from a user who goes by the name of Tim Booth's Eyes. She'd like to know, why should we believe anything you say when it has been proven you're a habitual liar?
That was so well delivered. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can I just say, everyone thinks you're an asshole. That's essentially what that was. Let's see how he recovers from that. How did he come back?
Well, I first of all don't agree with the conclusion that Tim, the questioner, asked, but or the premise of the question. But look, I think the best way for me to answer that is to say, look at what I get on and deliver, and what I say I'm going to deliver, and that's what I'm in politics to do, to try to make life better for people if I possibly can. I'm there to try to get the country. I was elected at a particularly difficult time in politics to get some tough things done. Things then became, if anything, even more difficult because of the pandemic. But if you look at what we're doing, we're getting on and delivering. And I would say, look at getting many more police out on the streets to make our streets safer. We've already got about 13,000 more. Neighbourhood crime down substantially. Look at what we've done with our NHS, which I made a big thing about.
So I think we're going to come on.
My answer about trust is people throw all sorts of accusations at me about all sorts of things. Ever since I drove around with a sign on a bus, and they have all sorts of reasons for saying that. But I think you just got to look at the record of what I deliver.
That record for you includes tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths after Johnson delayed 2 lockdowns, the projected biggest fall in living standards since records began. That's what we're facing this year, and the longest NHS delays in living memory. I'm also not sure why he says people have accused him of lying ever since he offered £350 million for the NHS on the side of a bus. We've been calling him a liar way longer than that, and with good reason indeed. He'd already lost at least 3 jobs for being found out telling porkies, even before the Brexit campaign began. It's worth noting that wasn't the only tough question directed at the Prime Minister.
On a related issue, Che Guevara's hamster asks, why have you removed the Nolan principles, namely integrity, objectivity, accountability, transparency, honesty and leadership in the public interest from the foreword of the ministerial code? Obviously, we had a lot of questions about Partygate.
Yeah.
Wollstonecraft asks, as a teacher, I would lose my job if I broke the law. Why doesn't the same apply to the Prime Minister? Another question, it's getting weird, asks, can you honestly say it's more important to hold leaving drinks for a colleague who you could hold an event for after restrictions loosened than it was for the rest of the country to say goodbye to loved ones at funerals?
We're not going to show you the answers because you've seen enough of Boris Johnson blabbing. You can look on YouTube if you want to see what he had to say. Dahlia, I want to bring you in and I really enjoyed seeing Boris Johnson destroyed by someone called Che Guevara's hamster and someone else called This Is Getting Weird.
I mean, this is what the internet was made for, really. Like, can it just be this over and over again rather than all of the nonsense that we have to deal with? I can't believe that he agreed to do that. Mumsnet is like a notoriously quite a ruthless platform. I'm glad that ruthlessness is being directed towards someone who actually has power rather than, random trans people on the internet. I'm surprised that at this moment, he's not avoiding the public eye as much as possible. And of course, in that answer, he goes straight into talking about putting more police on the streets, which is, again, the exact kind of moral panic baiting that I would expect from Boris Johnson at the moment. What good is there putting more police on the streets when it's the Met Police that were present at a lot of these law-breaking parties and not only didn't intervene, but actually then delayed the investigation into these parties? So clearly, you know, it would make sense that he would be pro sort of putting more police on the streets, but it is more a fact of like going down that sort of personal security, moral panic. You're not safe. We're going to make you safe. We're going to protect you from the criminals and the whatever, you know, insert other kind of stigmatized minority here. That's the exact kind of tack that I would be expecting him to go down right now. Where was all this heat when he was in the lead up to becoming prime minister? You know, now that he has become prime minister, it's incredibly difficult to remove him from that position of power, which is a position that has very tangible power on people's lives. And it's a power that he has proven himself throughout his political and journalistic career to be incredibly reckless with. This should have happened 5 or 6 years ago. Now that he is prime minister, we don't have the tools unless we wait until another election. We are now relying on a couple of Tory backbenchers to essentially save us from this man, from the media side and also from people within government, from people within the Conservative Party. This kind of work needed to have been done 5 or 6 years ago. And so when I see things like this, it's like, it's satisfying to watch, but it's also like, what are the systems that put this man into place? Because this is not someone who entered political life yesterday. You know, this is someone who has been in political and public life for several years and has not only not been held accountable, but has been actively cultivated by many of the institutions that are now claiming to be holding him to account.
The one positive thing of him sort of in this little death spiral is he has to take all of these weird risks. So you might remember in the 2019 general election, so Boris Johnson barely actually appeared. You know, he didn't really do any interviews because he thought, look, I'm in a position, my get Brexit done, you know, policy is going to win me this election. I don't want any slip-ups. He was quite reserved, quite small c conservative. Now, because, you know, everyone already hates him, it looks like his leadership's about to crumble. He's really taking these risks. Like you said, Dalia, it's surprising that he let this happen. He let these, you know, Che Guevara's hamster lay into him on YouTube. But I think we might see more and more of these kind of almost desperate set pieces that he's doing because he feels like he has no alternative. I mean, I saw on Twitter yesterday that potentially they're planning to have sort of COVID-style press conferences with charts, but instead of Chris Whitty, it will be economists, and they'll be talking about the cost of living. So I can imagine, again, loads and loads of questions about all of the people who are just fundamentally struggling during this cost of living crisis, despite, you know, as we've said, Rishi Sunak's package wasn't the worst in the world, but it hasn't, as Miata Fambula, who came on that show, said, hasn't really resolved any of the problems that were created by austerity. So you're going to have day after day of them answering questions about the huge backlogs in the NHS and stuff, which you definitely wouldn't see if they were ahead. But because they're desperate, we're going to see some pretty risky interviews, I think. Dalia, if you were an advisor to Boris Johnson, you got any sort of crazy things up your sleeve? You'd say, you know, there's nothing to lose here. Have a last gasp, go dancing on ice. I don't know, something along those lines.
If I was his PR advisor, I would shove him back in that freezer and get on the first plane to the Bahamas. I'd be out of here.
Fair dues. Fair answer. I respect that. All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinizing establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media, join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.